Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being with us here tonight to meet Queen Esther on the eve of her fast day. Queen Esther began to really visit me at the beginning of the pandemic, and a series of chants came through in her voice, and I'm excited to share them with you this evening. And before we move into those chants, I offer a chant of calling forth Queen Esther. I'm going from being Malkah Binah to being Queen Esther. Esther HaMalkah, Esther, Esther HaMalkah, Esther, Esther HaMalkah, Esther HaMalkah, Esther HaMalkah, Esther. If anyone is moved to join me in singing, calling forth the Queen. Esther HaMalkah, Esther, Esther HaMalkah, Esther, Esther HaMalkah, Esther HaMalkah, Esther HaMalkah, Esther. The Queen has been summoned. Well, actually, this is Malkah Binah. I wanted to share my fascination with Queen Esther. So I'm sharing first on the top. We spent a year in Israel when I was 6 years old, first grade. And in Israel, Purim is celebrated in school. And here I am, my mother made for me a brown yarn mask. And oh, and did I stop sharing? So appreciative for my, okay. There we go. Okay, starting again. So here I am with my gorgeous brown yarn mask as a first grader, and exploring who is Queen Esther. Lots of little girls like to dress up for Purim as Queen Esther. And here I am again in 2018 as Queen Esther during that first year of the Me Too movement. And there I am chanting from the Megillah, the Scroll of Esther, chapter 2. And for the first time, I noticed the pain in my heart as I read the verses about the young women being gathered up and brought into the palace. And so I was moved to chant in the melody that we've traditionally used for the Book of Lamentations. And noticing that there were laments here in this farce of a story of Queen Esther that we read on a very carnivalesque holiday. So I invite you to study this image that was gifted to the Jewish Museum in New York, and just to notice what is here and how this image moves you. This is called Harriet Tubman, Queen Esther. Fred Wilson is an artist who takes different iconic images and brings them together to challenge us to see the world differently. And here is an image of Harriet Tubman, who was born into slavery, escaped, and became a leader in bringing people from slavery into freedom. And we have a 16th century image of Queen Esther. And bringing these two together challenges us in terms of how we see Harriet Tubman and also how we see Queen Esther. And I invite you to keep that in mind of who is Queen Esther? Who is the Queen Esther that you have known and about? I started out with Queen Esther is this beauty queen. She won the beauty contest, and we want to complicate that and really deepen. Queen Esther has become a best friend of mine, and I hope she will become for you as well as we explore who she is this evening. So moving into her story. In chapter 2 of the book of Esther, we learn that she has no father and no mother. In the Hebrew, ein la av va'em. And in the very next verse, we learn that she was taken to the king's palace. Vatilakach Esther el Beit HaMelech. And when we slow down and sink into those verses, there's so much pain. A girl with no father and no mother, and then taken essentially into sexual slavery in the house of the king, along with so many other young, beautiful women. And when I saw this, Esther had no father or mother, I was reminded of being at a Yiddish singing workshop. And we were learning this song about written about this tragic story of a young woman in Eastern Europe. And my teacher sang so powerfully her connection between her body and her voice. And I approached her after class and said, "How did you learn to sing? I want to sing like that." And what she shared was that her mom died in childbirth. And she was in an orphanage as a young girl, and she started to sing, and singing was what gave her comfort. And that image I transferred to Esther, and imagining that singing gave her comfort and strength, and that this was a way, because she was this incredible, I'll call her a human being. In my imagination, she's real. And she learned resilience. And I want to share also something I learned from, I was listening to On Being with Krista Tippett, and she interviewed Joe Carter, who was a scholar of African American spirituals or sorrow songs. And he spoke about how powerful these songs were in giving strength to the enslaved people. And I'd like to read this, read this quotation from Joe Carter. "I think that the sorrow became the entrance, the open door into a whole new world of experience. The slaves could not experience the normal world. They couldn't go out and go shopping. They couldn't buy a house. They couldn't do all the things that the normal white person did. They were whipped and they had chains. and they found a secret door to take them into that world where the tears are wiped away. And the thing that we find is that in the midst of all of the most horrible pain, some of these powerful individuals lived transcendent, shining lives. They were able to rise up above. They were able to be loving and forgiving in the midst of all. And this is how I have come to see Queen Esther. So the first of the chants of Queen Esther, drawing from one of the African American spirituals that was shared in that radio show, "Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child," and weaving in a verse from Psalm 27, which is a psalm that is recited every day during the period around the Jewish New Year. "My father and my mother have left me, ki avi ve'imi azavuni, and God will gather me in." Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone, and a long, long way from home. Ki avi ve'imi azavuni, avi ve'imi azavuni, avi ve'imi azavuni, ve'ya asfeni. Dear Yah, please hold me close. Ve'ya asfeni. So I imagine that the young women had a lot of time together, that they spent a lot of time in the same spaces in the palace. And Esther, I imagine, as a leader among the young girls, and as someone who had faced so much adversity as a child, she knew a kind of resilience that meant that the shock of being taken into the palace wasn't quite as intense as the shock for the girls who had grown up in warm, loving homes and where there'd been some stability in their lives. And so Esther became like a mother to the other young girls, a supporter, and she believed in women's community. And the image came to me that when one of the girls was taken to the king at night, when she was brought back in the morning to the harem, Esther would gather everyone in a circle to welcome her back in, she would come in looking distraught, and Esther would lead all the other women in song to welcome her back in and to help her wash away the shame. For her to know that she is being accompanied and witnessed. Esther knew that that's what heals trauma. Lo tevoshi velo tikalni ma tishtochachi umatehemi lo tevoshi velo tikalni ma tishtochachi umatehemi. You need not be embarrassed. You need not feel ashamed. We are here with you. And I imagine they would give her a hug as she cried until she was ready to rejoin them as they soaked in all of the perfumes and oils. It's said that Esther soaked for 6 months before being brought to the king. Another detail from chapter 2 of the book of Esther. Esther did not reveal her people or her birthplace. Lo higida Esther et ama ve'et moledata. Esther was asked by her uncle Mordecai to wear a mask. Imagine she wore many levels of mask in order to survive in the palace. And so I imagine that Esther, in her chanting practice, had a special chant to keep herself revealed to herself and revealed in relationship with God, even as she was navigating these very complex social environment in the king's palace, so that she would know who she is, even as she didn't let others in on who she was. So this verse also from Psalm 27, Al taster panecha mimeni, do not hide your face from me. And note that word taster is the same root as her name Esther. Esther, the hidden one. Al taster panecha mimeni. Al taster panecha mimeni. Al taster panecha mimeni. Do not hide your face from me. Do not let me hide from myself. Do not hide your face from me. Do not let me hide. Do not let me hide from myself. Hineni, 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 I am here. One of the really lovely details about Esther is that this word chen appears many times in referring to Esther. Chen meaning grace. For example, in Esther chapter 2 again, verse 15, Esther was received with chen by all who saw her. And this made me especially curious. How does one become someone who sees this quality of chen in you? How does one cultivate chen? I don't think it's something that you just naturally have. I think it's something that's consciously cultivated. And because she had this quality, she was someone who others were ready to say yes to. I think it's the quality that meant that she was chosen as queen. I imagine that this king, that very few people knew how to talk to him. Very few people could actually see him rather than trying to get something from him. And she went in not wanting anything from him. And I even imagine that that first night there was no touching, but rather there was Esther who was there, who could truly see who the king was. And he felt comfortable with her, and he started to build trust in her. And it says many times that he would say to her, I'll give you half the kingdom, it's yours. And I do imagine that she asked for a special palace in the Zagreb Mountains outside the city of Shushan, and that this was a place where she would go with her friends, and a place where she could dance, and she could drum, and she could chant, and she could be herself. She could take off her queenly garb and just be herself. So I imagine that Esther had a chen practice, a practice of really praying to be one who was gentle and graceful, whose strength came from being deeply grounded and rooted. So here is how I imagine that every day she would chant the word chen, and it would come out a little different each time. And if you are so moved, I invite you to chant along with me your own chen song. Chen, 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 And Esther knew how to find that inner alignment and that trust, that her relationships had flow. And she would only ask for what she really needed. And when she would ask, others wanted to say yes to her. They wanted to please her. We're now skipping to chapter 4 of the book of Esther. And it's this moment that makes me say that Esther is among the greatest spiritual leaders. What makes Esther a great spiritual leader? We had a situation where Haman, the second in command to the king, made a decree that all of the Jewish people should be killed. And Esther at first didn't know about this, and her uncle Mordecai sent to her saying, "Please go to the king and try to save the people." And at first she resisted. And she knew that she would be risking her own life if she went to the king, if the king didn't call to her. The king was still in charge. Even though she was the queen, they were not equals. It wasn't that kind of relationship. First she resisted, and then she prayed about it and came to the realization that yes, she could go before the king. But she didn't simply charge ahead and go to the king. Rather, she said to Mordecai, "Go assemble all the Jews who are present in Shushan and fast for me, tzumu alai." Or really, fast with me. Neither eat nor drink for 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast. And so what she was doing was inviting them all, even though they weren't physically present with her in the palace, they were all joining her. They were woven together energetically. So she had all of this support. All of the people were together serving the cause of the queen going forth. That to me is true spiritual leadership. Only then would she go to the king. And I'm also very moved by this last line, "If I perish, I perish. Ha'asher avadati, avadati." She also had that capacity to go into a place of complete surrender. It would be no longer under her control. What was under her control was how she presented herself and that strength that she had gained along with the strength of all of her people. But then she also knew she needed to let go and surrender and allow what was going to happen to happen. Otherwise, she would have been too afraid to step forward. So this is the chant of Esther summoning the people to fast with her. And by the way, as I mentioned in the invitation, tomorrow is the Fast of Esther. It's a dawn-to-dusk fast in the Jewish calendar. Fast with me. And I have come to see in recent years that this Fast of Esther is a time to prepare ourselves to be courageous, to speak the truths that need to be spoken, to help to save the people, whatever that looks like for each of us. It's the call to fast and then stepping back into that place of surrender. Tzumu alai, tzumu alai, tzumu, tzumu, tzumu alai, tzumu alai, tzumu alai, tzumu, tzumu, tzumu alai, tzumu alai, tzumu alai, tzumu, tzumu, tzumu alai, tzumu, tzumu, tzumu alai. And even her maidens, we don't know yet whether she'd revealed that she was Jewish and that this was part of her story. Even her maidens fasted with her, which means that she was good to them. Tzumu alai, tzumu, tzumu alai. And then that place of surrender. Asher avarti, asher avarti, asher avarti, avarti. Asher avarti, avarti. Asher avarti, avarti. That surrender that enabled her to approach the king. Now, Esther is celebrated. We know the end of the story. The king received her. She saved her people. And yet Esther was not freed from the palace. She remained in the palace. This is, in some ways, a really sad story. She made the best of her situation, and yet she would not end up being freed. And there is a midrash, a Jewish legend, that when she entered the king's outer chamber, the Shekhinah, the divine presence that dwells among us, left. And she called out a verse that in Christian tradition is also said to be spoken by Jesus on the cross. From Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me? Or for what have you forsaken me? And I share this verse in chant. This was actually the first chant that came to me when I began my Esther project, right as the pandemic was beginning. And Daniela will join me. Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. 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 lama saftani, Eli, Eli, lama saftani, Eli, Eli, lama saftani, Eli, Eli, lama saftani. And in chanting this verse during those first months of the pandemic, when I felt so much grief, when we all experienced so much loss in so many different ways, and no matter what age we were, that having a way to explore and express that feeling of, for what have you forsaken me, and it being okay, that is part of the relationship with God, is the calling out even from our suffering, even from that place of, in this moment, I don't trust that you're caring for me, for it to be okay for that relationship to be complicated. And this is who Esther has come to me as, a woman of chen, of grace, a woman who explores all the different dimensions of the relationship with the divine, a woman who cares deeply for others and creates the rituals of healing trauma, a woman who has known great loss and has found her way to courage, to resilience. And a woman who doesn't step forward immediately. When Mordechai came to her, she didn't just move forward. A woman who steps back and really asks, is this my lane? Is this particular task for me? And I invite us all to receive the spirit of Queen Esther in the ways we lead in our own lives. And skipping ahead to near the end of the book of Esther, chapter 8, there is a verse of great celebration which has actually been incorporated into the Havdalah ceremony, the ceremony for ending the Sabbath. And it's actually 4 different kinds of goodness: Ora, Simcha, Sason, and Ikar. Yakar. Light, joy, gladness, and honor, or we might say preciousness. And so we will close the song with the abundance of goodness that was flowed over the people in Esther's day. And in the Megillah, in the book of Esther, it says, Ken tiye lanu, may it be, well, actually, I don't know whether that's not in the book of Esther. Maybe it's in the, well, I'll have to look it up. But it's in the Havdalah ceremony.
Isn't it also in the Shiva Brachot?
Oh, and it's, I can't remember, I think maybe in the Sheva Brachot for celebrating weddings. Not exactly. Okay, so I invite you to sing along. We have the transliteration if you don't know Hebrew. Hayta ora, hayta ora, v'simcha, v'sason, v'kar. La Yehudim, hayta ora, hayta ora, v'simcha, v'sason, v'kar. Ken tieh lanu, tieh lanu, tieh lanu. Ken tieh lanu, tieh lanu, tieh lanu. La Yehudim, hayta ora, hayta ora, v'simcha, v'sason, v'kar. La Yehudim, hayta ora, hayta ora, v'simcha,